straight. No, contact.
Hold the line.
5, 2, 3, 1. Yep, direct hit, keep firing.
Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good time. We have a especially juicy session for you today. Here, going off the top of the list, we have Old Man Avidus. Come say hello to the beautiful audience.
Glory in his eternal name.
Hi, Glory. Then we have Razor, local rice farmer. Hello.
Hey guys, feels not doing well. Good.
And myself, the locally caged, yet unified, dignified orc. Hello. And always our permanent guest star, Kaczynski.
Afternoon, guys.
All right, Razor, come here. Take the hat, and I'm done.
Yes, Lizek. Yes, he is.
Okay. So introduction thoughts. Let's see. What would we want to talk about introductory? What would be on everybody's mind to start with? You guys think? Suggestions?
Where's my
Well,
crickets?
Well, we could start with the coming back from what many thought was certain defeat, and certain people hoped would be defeat, so the game wouldn't die. But doesn't look like it's going that way anymore. Looks like the Colonials got beaten back pretty heavily. Now, obviously, this is it's a good thing for the faction, good thing for wardens and stuff like that. And there's no more. There's no one on the faction that enjoys purging heresy more than me. However, in all seriousness, we need to look at the ramifications of what this is going to do to the game. And I think that next war you're going to be fighting queues more than you're going to be fighting actual colonials, because I think that all fight has gone out of the colonial faction. Clans like the loss of siege to them, especially when tanks are getting brought out and stuff like that, has just proven to be far too much of a loss to recover from, and they're just falling apart across the line.
But Avitus, they got one. I'm sorry, I had to.
Yeah, but I mean, they can
Bully.
even if you have a really really good clan on the colonial side, there isn't enough of them now. Like, for instance, they're running into the same problem. They would run into the same problem that we were running into maybe 2 years ago, or a year ago, or whatever, however long it's been, where we feel as if we have to spread ourselves thin in order to hold the line, basically, because there's no other clans that are picking up the slack. However, now we obviously have things like Siege and WN and a myriad of other very veteranized clans and stuff like that to pick up our slack. And that's not, I mean, the Colonials didn't have many to begin with, and then to lose one of their biggest ones, especially to a mechanized clan as well, that's like a devastating loss. And on top of everything else, the lack of in at least my opinion, the lack of experimentation with their vehicles, the failure to adopt the tactics that the devs sort of like wrote the vehicles to have. You're seeing it here and there, but you're not seeing it on a wide scale. You're not seeing it on a faction wide scale, and I think that's contributed quite heavily to how the war has progressed. Now, I think that
I think you got off there.
I think we lost him.
Yeah.
We're
Anyways,
talking so fucking much. Like, God just
You
had a
muted him,
fucking
Dark. You muted him.
yeah, just fucking come clean, Dark. Anyway, to his point though, while we get him back, I think that's a good point of starting of exploration for the discussion, the mortar half trucks and them being available basically as soon as the
Yeah.
war started.
Yeah.
That was a very
Hello?
interesting. Yeah, can you hear us now?
Yeah,
Ed?
he's
Yeah,
back.
Oh,
he's alive,
yes,
guys. He's
yes.
alive.
Sorry about that. Sorry. Yeah, but the mortar half tracks, that's where I was going to get onto next. But yeah, you go ahead, Reza.
Yeah.
Let
So
me chime in.
go
Chime
ahead.
in.
Go ahead,
Let's
Archibald.
all agree they gave the mortar half track at such an early state as a massive crutch for the colonials to win this war.
Yeah, and I had no problem
We're
with that.
all on.
I had no problem with that at all. You know what I mean? I don't think in future wars it needs to really be looked at where these things come in the tech tree. And I don't mind factions having handicaps and stuff like that, because right now the colonials fucking need it, and we need their population up so we have something to fucking fight. You know what I mean?
Well, and so I remember like when the mortar half track came out, it may have been the same day. You had said in the channel, like 15 of us in there, the colonials need to win this war, or like Foxhole's going to die, right? Like I think that was the exact comment that you had made.
Yep.
And because a lot of people were really frustrated, obviously, with where it's at in the tech tree. But I also want to say, and I think that a lot of what you said is right. I think it kind of goes a little bit both ways, that, and we'll talk about this more later, but I definitely think that it feels anyway that the Warden faction has quote unquote certain handicaps, benefits, whatever you'll have it in the late war that predisposes them to do well. And it's at least perceived that way. Whether that is true or not, it is perceived that way by the player base. And that has a significant influence on how the players respond to the situation and how they play. And then the other thing you mentioned was kind of the clan base, and I think that there is an element of significant relevance to that, like activity of clans and what they bring to the table. But the average random that plays throughout the week and keeps the fronts alive is who's winning and losing a lot of these conflicts on a wide scale throughout the week, and we're seeing that progress slant toward Wardens. Even when we were on the back foot with a mortar half track, they weren't able to make the progress they needed for a couple reasons, in my opinion. Number one being some really clutch play from some people that, yes, are clan based, but also not clan affiliated, that just held the line through a really tough part of the tech tree. And that was insane. I mean, that was absolutely insane. Tons of credit to them. And the secondarily, the map was too big. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's
At the
okay.
beginning of the war, I remember telling some guys that absolutely felt like, oh, we're going to lose this war. Because this is the point where everyone was noticing there wasn't a lot of Warden veterans playing. So, and then open up to the fact that the devs gave us another massively all the maps in wider front when the population has already dwindled more than half. And it was just, a lot of people were demoralized to be like, yeah, we're going to lose. Let's just not even bother playing. People were taking breaks and whatnot. I remember telling people that were, playing on these QRFs saying like, if we hold the line as hard and long enough until medium to late game, that all the veterans it's going to be like a massive morale boost. Like, holy shit, like these guys held the line for so fucking long. Let's come in and boost their numbers, And it's exactly like what happened. And we had everyone's coming in and coming back from comeback after, like, don't get me wrong, when the half tracks came out, they came out fucking strong and hard. Like if you look at the map, everything was probably almost reversed. What was blue was probably what was green.
Yeah.
And they were like pushing us to our production lines, and it wasn't fun being a warden at the first and middle stage of the war. But
and the pop
they
reflected
couldn't
it.
really. Exactly.
Colonial population was lopsided. We had 5-second respawn times, and then it's been flipped. We had a minute respawn time yesterday.
I mean, whatever way you look at it, there's a myriad of different reasons why what has happened. However, I think one of the big reasons will tie into a later topic that we're going to get into in the video. And the way that I'm seeing it from my personal experience, and I'm pretty confident that this is happening, the Warden faction simply, like, we don't take losing as badly as the Colonials. Like, if we're losing, we're like, no problem, we'll fight to the bitter end, to the last man, for Callahan, sort of thing. But the Colonials don't have that. You know what I mean? They have, like, when we push them back to their lines, they don't have anything to get behind. You know what I mean? And I think that I mean, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but that will tie into a later topic. And I think that is one of the huge reasons why the Warden faction is so unified, is because we've put this character up on a pedestal to all unify around and meme around and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, that is what unifies us. You know what I mean? And saying daft shit like for Callahan and stuff like that is what unifies our faction so much more than the Colonials, because the Colonials don't seem to play the game on the same level as a lot of Wardens do.
And you
Yeah, go ahead there.
you'd think something as minor as that wouldn't be an influencing factor, but and you think about it, he's right, because the Wardens are more morale strength than the Colonials do. If we're like on our final knees, in our last towns, everyone is probably their best to just fight and just
To kill as
and
many
it's
as
just always,
possible.
yeah, it's take more than what you'll go down with. You know what I mean? Like, if, yeah, you're gonna die, but you're gonna take as much people down with you as possible.
Yeah.
And I don't ever feel or see that ever happening on the Colonial side. It just kind of seems like, oh, like they're about to kick our ass. Okay, let's get the new
What
war started, guys.
what I really can't understand about the Colonial faction right now, especially over the past 3 wars, is it appears to be as soon as the Wardens get to the Colonial strength line, which is like their second tier line that should have concrete by the time we're pushing into it late in the war. As soon as we get into there, their strongest defensive line, it appears as if it's just abandoned. You know what I mean? And we're just farming, PVE farming at that point against concrete, and it's just frustrating.
And I think the reason for that is, I mean, we'll talk later. I think it's been like it's always been that way to a certain extent, but it's been really pronounced since this update because of the perceptions around game balance. And I really think that's important. I won't talk about it now, but I think that that's so critical, this discussion.
To come full circle, because like Avatar started this discussion about the Carmor, I want to wrap it up, but I want to come full circle with it because he started at the point where Colonials failed to adopt to the vehicles, or not necessarily the vehicles, but I think to the vision, because the vision that devs have for them, their faction, and their vehicles, right? And the lack of flexibility is shown by getting like, imagine Wardens getting that mortar half track day one. Can you imagine the fucking amount of spam and enthusiasm around it? Colonials were enthusiastic about it as well, but when I close my eyes, I see that thing used a lot different than I saw it used. I don't know, maybe it's just because they didn't have enough, or like, it's the first war and they didn't get used to it, because that's also a thing. You need to get a bit of accustomed with the tools. But I would argue that although Wardens created their own identity a lot more than Colonials, lure-wise, let's say, at the same time, Wardens were more flexible in recent wars with the new changes, right? The devs said, you guys get this tank that is good doing this. Wardens said, sure, we'll take it, we'll do whatever the fuck you
Yeah.
tell us with it. We don't
Well-
care. We'll just like, tell us what to do to win. We'll do it. It's fine.
And I want to just chime in again with that, because I know we talked earlier about like the current meta changes for the faction, and for like the past, ever since Foxhole introduced it in mechanized warfare, it's always been frontline combat, and they took the direction of the Wardens is that this is what they excel in. So if you kind of understand where we still have both factions drilled down to this current state of armored warfare is just frontline tank versus frontline tank, while one side has the complete benefit of that old meta, the other side is failing to keep up with the new meta of you guys are not meant to be frontlining. You are meant to be flanking around, exploiting the weaknesses of the frontline faction. If you get what I mean, and
Yeah.
that's the crucial thing they're not adapting to. That's always going to fuck them to the end.
I mean, I think the worst thing. I mean, I appreciate the devs' choice to take this. I'm not sure what you call it, where we've got different vehicles and shit. Like, I appreciate them wanting to take it down that route, but I think they got the themes wrong for the factions. I think they should have read if they were a little bit more involved with the community, and they had a better feeling for the community and how we play the game and things like that, and the ideas that we have behind it, then they would know that it was probably a better move to theme the Colonial faction more defensively and theme the Warden faction more aggressively. And I appreciate that might not fit in with the official law or whatever, but I think that in terms of game, like game balance and the way that the community plays on either side, would have probably made the wars not only fairer but last a lot longer and things like that.
And
But
yeah,
we ended up different.
yeah, because I want to actually move to the next topic because this was the the perfect segue. I would call it, Avatar. I call it the lure incident because I found it funny.
Oh,
I still find it funny to this. We're actually gonna watch it, so probably most people already saw it, but still would like to watch it before we comment on it.
Okay, so just yeah, we'll play it, and then I'll comment. Yeah, because I don't want to segue too much.
Is
Okay.
this what we were talking about before we started?
Yes, this is the small incident. Doug didn't see it, so he's like premiering it right now with us.
Ooh, let me just recline.
I mean, the Colonials are a faction that, to my mind, doesn't value their life as highly as some of the Warden counterparts. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, our Lord Master.
Remember,
So-
he's saying this lore-wise, not actually the players.
There's so many coming from the south.
Get it,
Enemies.
Ah, they're here!
Glory to Callahan! Kill them all!
Get on the wall, get on the wall. All squad, get on the wall and shoot the broad face. Just like shoot.
Lol. Don't stay in the middle, guys. Don't stay in the
I
Yeah,
enjoy that every time. so good.
God.
I have to say that I must have watched that about 200 times by now. Like, honestly, that is a DK charge 101. But away from how awesome the clip is, there's obviously a deep underlying issue that needs to. I mean, I've talked about it briefly before, but we haven't really seriously discussed this whole law situation, and it's been an ongoing thing that I've been pretty confident in. It's not really come to the surface until quite recently. There seems to be several comments and things like that that just sort of seem to indicate that the what's the one in charge of the law? What's his name? Matt. It seems as if Matt takes great offence to the way that the Warden faction or the players have basically formed their own identity over the past few years. And we have our own clan is obviously themed after a 40k Imperial Guard faction and things like that. So we accepted that, like, we have different lore and shit like that to the game, but it sort of bled over into randoms and other clans and things like that. And over the years, it has grown into something that probably our biggest and best secret weapon, in my opinion, that our faction has.
Simply 2 words. For Callahan.
Indeed. Yeah.
And just that little phrase alone, and it's like I mean I can empathize with Matt, where being frustrated if other people are taking what you created and not twisting it into something better, but like, you're changing something that you're passionately working on, and they're doing their own twist on what essentially is your idea.
Yeah, I do empathize in that regard. However, I've been playing this game for 3 years now, and I know that people that are interested in this sort of thing have been begging the guy to release some sort of like law or whatever, and his way of doing the law is so vague that it left a lot up to interpretation by people for a very, very long time. And then to have that a lot up to interpretation for a long time, and then to come in and say, no, the Warden faction is, they value life more than the Colonials, after so many years of us developing this identity of just being a human wave sort of thing, and not just our clan. I mean, it's across the entire faction. Like you said just there.
1 second, just to make sure, like, that was KFC that said it. Matt actually laughed pretty.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that. However, I am referring to Matt. because
Okay.
it does like I've seen it on streams and stuff like that over the years, dude. Like
Okay.
the guy does not like people stepping on his law, which is, I mean, I can understand, but in the same breath, he hasn't really given people a lot to go on over the years, and then for this to this to be taken now is it's getting to the point where I really think that they're trying to steer the faction away from where we've taken the law, because I really don't think they like where we've taken the law. So it's going to be a battle of wills, because I mean, at the end of the day, like I just said, the best weapon the Wardens have is those two words. Those two words are enough to take a defeated attitude into, let's take as many of these bastards with us as we can. So that in of itself, if you spread that across the entire faction, people don't care if they're dying, if they're screaming at the top of their lungs for some made up deity at the same time. You know what I mean? And that is like the value of that cannot be understated. Like, I've seen it so much over the years. And if the Colonials had something like that, if they had some sort of law figure to get behind and to make memes up about, and to give a general attitude to their faction, I think they would have a lot they would retain a lot more people, and people would have a lot better experiences playing Colonials, because they would have something that is greater than themselves to chant for and get behind. And it sounds stupid, but I've said, I've seen it work with our faction for years. So
I'd be curious to know what like the actual, and we'll never know, but just kind of to counterpoint that, and this for risk of being executed for heresy, I'm not big into lore. I don't care about lore. It's not my thing. I enjoy DK, and I play this game for DK, and I know that there's a large population of people that play this game for the people that they play with as well. And so I don't know. I don't want to overestimate or underestimate lore per se. But I'm going to.
Fair enough.
Just say it already. Just
Yeah. I appreciate that it's not something that everybody cares about. But there are a group of people, quite sizable group of people, that do care. And like it or hate it, it does affect our faction, at least. Doesn't affect the Colonial faction, but it does affect our faction, and especially the theme that we have introduced to our faction over the years. It can't be understated how important that is to the Warden faction, in my opinion.
To go in support of what Kaz said, because like he's the no lore guy, I'm the a bit of lore doesn't really hurt, but I'm not gonna spend 10 hours of my day looking into videos and shit like that. So you can just like include me in the same category with Kaz, but I'm a bit more open to it. The one thing I don't really understand on this like this opposition to players creating their own stuff is, so again, I am the least qualified or second least qualified after Kaz person to talk about lure, but the way I see it, especially in other games I played in MMO RPGs and such, there's a good amount of especially NPCs involved that create the lure, right? That's how I see it. There's a lot of people that you interact with. Well, Foxhole doesn't have that. Foxhole has the players. The players are the content. We are the clients and the content of the game at the same time. So it's like, to me, it's almost a no-brainer. And I don't mean to be rude to anybody, but it's almost a no-brainer that if we are the content, we're also the lure creators, because there's no NPCs there to offer. I know they put in a few like people that were hanged, and a few like crosses in the middle of nowhere that people don't never see because there's no fighting there.
You don't learn. You don't learn anything
Exactly.
about that. That's just scenery filler. Like,
and
you
there's
don't
no
know
quest progression or something that classically takes you through. Some people skip it, but a lot of people like to read it or like listen to it if it's interactive with an APC, right? So we're the NPCs in the lore aspect. The players.
I mean, when the game first started, I remember the devs saying something about that they wanted the players to create the story of Foxhole, and at the time I wasn't behind that idea. I thought that was a bit, if I'm honest, lazy of them to say something like that. However, what that developed into over the years, you're getting things like Jade Cove. Jade Cove is like now 100%. Everybody, if you say the Holy City, reclaim the Holy City, everybody knows you're talking about Jade Cove. You know what I mean? Because Jade Cove has law made by us. A couple of years ago, the 19 documentary covered it. You know what I mean? It's like we can make our own law. Like,
the game lends itself well to that if you think about it, because we drive everything in this game in ways that you don't drive in most other games. So like if in the case of like an MMO, you kind of play within the confines of the system, and we have a system here that we have to follow, but this war doesn't end itself in the ways that you fight it, both in the strategies you use and how you approach like globally, whether you're going to attack Jade Cove or whether you're going to go drown yourself in the Vale, versus even the tactical details, like, okay, we're gonna throw 300 more shirts in this because we like to bayonet charge and don't care for our lives. That's all player based, right? Nobody forced us to do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But one thing we always got to remember: there's always a massive disconnect between what's a written lore and what's actually in-game lore. I know in the video we just watched right now, you even have HB saying this is just the lore of the game,
Absolutely.
not the player lore. But it's like in the end of the day, you're still creating that massive distance between the player lore is kind of more relevant to what it's like you're playing this game and you and your faction's been playing it this way, but the devs are trying to tell you, no, you're supposed to be like this. You're not supposed to care about one another. You're supposed to just do that instead.
I don't think they actually want to impose it. The thing I think is, like you said, they are just insisting on like this history that was written, and it's like, imagine a real war we're in, and that's the history. So historically, wardens want to survive more. That's their argument. But at the same time, if we consider recent history, right, the 3 years of us actually being involved, that being in the past, I would say, it was proved otherwise. So insisting on it seems rather forced, right? Like, why would you insist
that's my
on
point.
Exactly? Like, let the past be the past. You can say, well, in the past, according to whatever manuscripts we found, wardens were more conservative or whatever. But recently, right? Recently, they have, devolved this fanatism of defending their homeland, where they just blindly charge into the enemy, and then you combine the past with the present, and you create something way better that everybody would enjoy, if you ask me.
See, that's ultimately like the best outcome right there, because you can still have room to expand. You can always expand the history of any type of thing. You can always expand the history, but the present is what's the issue right now. It's like exactly how you're putting it. Like back in the past, wardens, they cared a lot. Now they're seeing it's more tactically advantaged just to run out and fucking do that. But another also things to look at, because when they like to do this when they release new vehicles, is give it a flavor of war, so you get a depiction of how it's supposed to be used, or some form of like made up stats with it. Like for example, let's go with the first one, which is the armored car, saying it was mainly used for urban warfare. Now, do we all agree one of the worst places to ever deploy armored car is in the fucking cities? Like, if you ever deploy in a town, you are going to lose it, and when you spawn, you will die again, because that's how bad it is.
Yeah, that's one of the silly things. Continue, sorry.
And then one of the newest ones is with the ballista being, it's supposed to fire at a safe distance, so that way you can blah 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 blah. Well, currently right now it has 25 meters, and it's not. I mean, we all know 25 meters for an armored vehicle is not safe at all.
And
it's like there's this disconnect. No, go.
No, exactly, because I was about to pronounce the word disconnect, and I'm sorry, and I know this has been discussed and challenged by the devs, but to me, it's just like clearly a condition of the guy writing that down, not necessarily not playing the game, but not playing the game to a level that he understands the meta, he understands how the factions work, how they how they act in wars, how they use the tools they have, right? Because you can play the game, right? You can casually play the game and have no clue that, for example, Raid, CRG, and a few other clans love to actively be partisans, right? You can play the game and have no clue about that, never interact with them, right? You can play the game and have no interaction with 82DK on a massive Saturday, because you might just not end up on the same front with them, and you never find out how they operate or how they use stuff, right? And we even see it in our own clan. You can play the game as a logistics guy and never understand the combat side, and so on and so forth. So, you know,
Took me a year to figure out you could pull 3 items with a truck.
but
Wait! You can pull 3 items with the truck?
but the conclusion to my point, at least while I see the conclusion to my point, is I don't think anybody expects them to necessarily play unhealthy amount of Foxhole in order to get all of these the details out of this. But they could either like ask more people that are actually in tune with it. A good example would be, and I'll never understand this, why they don't use moderators actively for like research like this, because
Yeah.
they're like considered neutral. I know some maybe are more or less than neutral. It doesn't really matter really, but they're at least in the developers' eyes, we know they're considered above the community, no, not in a preferential way, but in a way that, you know, they're calm people that they can discuss with, right? That's why they put them there, right? So why not use that? Why not use that resource you have over there and ask them, or even like send them on a mission to be like, hey guys, like we want to put some flavor text down for this vehicle, and can you guys like give us some hints about, like, we were thinking about this, can we get some feedback from you? Because I'm sure the moderators would be more than willing to, first of all, not spill the beans on the information, and second of all, give some relevant details like, well, Matt, I'm sorry, but the armored car has no place in the town ever. Please don't write that, because people are going to laugh about it for eons to come, you know, sort of a
I
thing.
mean, but it goes that. I mean, this whole line of thinking goes so deep. I mean, I thought there was hope for this sort of thing when KFC joined the clan for a little bit, but then that sort of petered out and went nowhere. I really think if they had more in-depth knowledge of what goes on with clans, or just generally on a front line and things like that, if they went to people that wouldn't necessarily agree with everything that they say, with being blunt, they'll probably get a lot more out of what is said.
It's difficult, the devil's advocate, for a second, because, you know, one thing that we can all agree on is it is you not playing the same game on Saturday that you're playing every other day of the week.
Pretty much,
yeah. All right, and so I mean, we are a little biased, I think, just to be level with said a little bit. We're a little biased with how we approach things because we change the game once a week in a way that, and I do not play Foxhole and enjoy Foxhole unless I'm playing on Saturday, because I don't like the game that Foxhole is outside of Saturday. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
you know, and as a result, people experience it very differently. And the devs, even if they don't play on Saturday ever or have an interface, don't realize the game we're playing, because it is not the same game.
I mean,
it just feels like when we play Saturday, it's the way Foxhole was ultimately meant to be played. When you have combined arms at a massive organized force versus the rest of the week, and it's just like squads of people just trying to do something, but ultimately you enter that stale state of, well, unless there's no one fighting, you know, you finally make a push, or you're just fighting a rudimentary fight that goes absolutely nowhere. You're just going back and forth. You kill someone, they kill someone, and it just doesn't contribute to anything other than a slog.
Without getting lost in a deeper discussion there, but, you know, it just reminds me of, like, how many bridge fights did we see this war that lasted for days, like literally days on end? And there was you know, we showed up to one of the bridge fights in our one of our ops that made it into the list there were our last war, and that bridge fight, if we had left it there without our intervention, would have lasted for days. We ended it in an
We
hour.
had one this
You know what I mean? Like,
we had one this war in fucking Farnak.
Yeah.
I mean, in conclusion, I mean, I will just say, I find it to be one of the most disappointing things, and it's such a shame, because sometimes I think the developers of this game don't realize how lucky they are to have a community that is this passionate about the game. You know what I mean? They say they do the art and shit like that, but I don't really think they understand fully how much people love this game and love the communities within the game. And there is just, I'm going to bring that word in again, the disconnect. If they could just have a bit more communication with prominent members of the community, and I'm not talking about the yes men, I'm talking about the people that won't necessarily agree with what they're saying. If they communicated with those people, it wouldn't just placate clans, and it wouldn't just placate the people that quote unquote complain. It would, in my opinion, improve game balance. It would improve gameplay because these people understand that that gameplay on the highest level. Do you know? And I'm not just talking about us. I'm talking about a lot of other people as well in the community.
One thing I just want to answer a question I saw in chat from Bullet Catchers because it's worth clarifying. What I mean when I talk about playing on Saturday versus the rest of the week, DK operations on Saturday do involve us, a very large organized force where we bring every single tool available with a huge logistics arm, infantry, mechanized, you name it. Every element that Foxhole offers, we bring, and we bring a level of competence and coordination to. But it's not just us, which is what makes it so beautiful. The Colonials have risen to the occasion, and they join us on that day. Some of the best, most organized Colonials that on the faction, they come out and bring the same A game through a coalition of clans to try and stop us. And it is savage, high tier coordination fighting against high tier coordination, struggling to gain advantage. And it's awesome. Like the populations are maxed on the map, and you've got a lot of material and manpower going around. It's a different game.
Yeah, I'm never more immersed than when it's utter carnage on a Saturday and you're yelling for Callahan as you're charging a trench and getting gunned down. That's my heaven right there.
And on that note, I would like to try and segue to the next topic, and I also want to kind of mention that what I'm about to show is not necessarily balance related, but it is from the operation we had yesterday. It's a pretty cool moment that a lot of people asked me about. An engagement where free light tanks tried to oppose the advance of
This is savage.
our force. Yeah.
If you're wondering about a Saturday op, this is what it's all about. It doesn't get much better than this.
Yeah, it's a good indication of what we strive for, at least. So let me set it up real quick here.
And all you infantry players take note of what our infantry is doing during the charge. Not one step back. They're not trying to avoid getting killed. They are charging.
Okay, let's see if we can get this rolling.
Remember, we don't care about our lives.
Indeed.
Right, you have your infantry support in place, Razor, on your call.
They might be baiting us into a sticky bamboo. Be careful.
We're about to be by you. The bushes. $85. $74. 65. Pull back, I think.
I'm gonna stay behind Razor.
Moving down the road.
Oh, they're getting fucked.
Don't kill it, don't kill it, don't kill it. Oh, well,
that's what I'm talking about.
I mean, good push, guys.
Oh my god, what a massacre.
Pixelize this.
Yeah, that's about it.
I have to say I didn't fully, because I died. I don't know if you saw me when I died. I shouted for glory and then I got evaporated by the tank shell. But I'd never noticed how. I mean, those half track drivers need to be commended for that, man. Just
Yes.
throwing the half tracks against light tanks like that. It must have took some balls to do that.
Mid-shielding.
Both the infantry and those half tracks ultimately, like, it's crazy when you think about it. When you're in a tank, like this suspicion that the infantry might have a sticky, so should I target them or just go
Yeah.
for the armor? And it's just like this, like the fact that you're seeing like the infantry ahead of the armor, and it's like the armor has no decision, like, oh, okay, I'm gonna shoot at these guys, but then the BT comes finally within range, knows a shot at them. Tactically, I don't know what the Colonials were doing, like seeing this like crawling zombie chase them, and it's like, oh god, back up,
I
back
think
up.
I think they were probably overwhelmed with how much the commander was shouting commands at them because he was seeing a lot of shit going on in his binos, so he didn't really know what was going on. And then I think it got to a certain point and they knew the game was up. But I mean, I'm not sure we want to talk about the video that much, even though it was awesome. It speaks for itself.
Yeah,
Do you want to get back onto the topic, Reza?
onto the track, and I'll give it over to Kaz because this is his baby. Well, his baby's proposal for the topic for today.
Yeah, so I'm still thinking about this. And I know we've talked about this a couple times, but one of the things, and I mentioned it before, I'll mention it again. I'm concerned about the direction of game balance for this game and where it's going to ultimately land, because I think that today the balance of the game is just off, and some of the changes that they've added to the game have hurt that balance. And and I'm even willing to concede that maybe the balance isn't off, maybe the balance is fine, and maybe there is some kind of formula out there with how all of these vehicles interact that's so big brain that we just as a players haven't found it yet. But the reality is that a large percentage of the player base, be it Warden or Colonial, is convinced that the balance is off, and they are unable to perform in this environment in a way that is going to produce really good results and health results for the game. And as a result, what you're seeing is you're seeing player retention issues. You're seeing players that are, and this is human nature in a lot of contexts, and it's natural, but as a game developer, I think you have to embrace the challenge of working through it. But you've given players an excuse not to criticize their own failures at this point. And we're guilty of it as Wardens. The Colonials are guilty of it as Colonials. Again, or in the early war, Mortar Half Tracks came out immediately. Every single defeat is attributed to the Mortar Half Track, even if it wasn't relevant. But now that you've got this crutch to stand on, you're no longer criticizing your own gameplay. You're no longer criticizing your own growth, and it creates an issue because there's an apparent disparity. And I believe firmly that the Mortar Half Track was broken at the time that it was introduced and gave them a tremendous advantage that is demoralizing. And when you have these kind of things built into the game where you can get like where players struggle to work within the balance of the current situation, it's very, very harmful to a game. It's very, very harmful to meta. And you can see that play out not just in the context of Foxhole, but major game releases everywhere. We don't have to stay within the narrow niche of Foxhole. You can look at huge titles with huge budgets and lots of support and lots of game experience, and they struggle balancing very complex puzzles. Company Heroes is one of my favorites to go to. They fine-tune balance and have been fine-tuning balance for the lifetime that the game has been released, and still struggle to hit that nail on the head. And it is a constant effort. It's very difficult, especially when you have modular vehicles or different vehicles for factions like this. And so their bold initiative to introduce this is admirable in one sense, but very, very concerning in another, especially with a very lean player base that when you shed players, the game is fundamentally harmed. And we've hit a point where the player population, like I think 1 or 2 wars ago, we had 1,700 players on the game. Was glorious. It was so much fun to play. And we're having valleys of 300, 400 players right now. And I think a lot of that attrition comes from discouragement. Discouragement with what they feel the direction of the game is, discouragement with the tools they have available, and a sense of defeat and a sense of helplessness in the face of that. So I know this is a long monologue, and I'd be curious to hear your guys' thoughts, but unless they really take seriously the challenge in front of them, that we are going to be in a hard way to go about it in the future, I feel.
If I may, 1 second, Maybar actually posted the design philosophy, so I'm going to put it on stream real quick so we can look over it. Go ahead, Avitus, in the meantime.
I mean, I think that taking the game the way that they've taken it, very, very surprising, by the way, that the way that they've taken different variants of vehicles for both factions and stuff like that, but they're making their job so much harder, because you can't just think about themes and what certain vehicles do and blah blah blah. You've also got to think about, like, on the level of how people are going to use the vehicles. So is this particular vehicle good for a couple of sergeants, a couple of guys that have just got the game, played it for a few hours, and they want to take it out and have a bit of fun with it? Is it good for them? Or is it too overpowered when you start introducing that same vehicle to clans? Do you know what I mean?
And so it's hard.
It's
skill
extremely
ceiling on a
hard.
skill ceiling on a
Extremely.
vehicle, skill ceiling on anything is really hard to balance. But you have to have something that works for the casual audience.
And that's why I can't understand. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I like the fact that they've taken the game the way they've taken it, because more vehicle variations for me is a win. However, it's made their job of balancing the game extremely difficult, and I think you have a point in saying that it's going to affect the game in an extreme way
That's what
that we haven't
So,
fully seen yet.
I'll just pop this in real quick. I'm just sorry I didn't foresee we're gonna end up here, because I should have probably searched for the in the dev stream for the moment where they answer the question on this balancing topic. But I'll try and maybe present it next time. The answer was one that really concerned me, because the answer basically sounded something like, well, we're gonna be adding so many vehicles into this game that the balance is just gonna balance itself out, sort of a thing there. That was sort of the
that's
gist
never.
of it. I was like, what? Wait, what? Especially like, think about how the tech works right now, and think about the decisions that were taken
Just from
when
player's perspective.
exactly, because we did some stupid fucking stuff. Like right now we're gonna have two light tanks vetted because we didn't like even take into consideration that. So if you're gonna leave the balance in the hands of the players and that's it, that's probably the worst idea of out of all the ideas to to approach it, in my
And
opinion.
I mean, not only that, and I'm really not trying to suck our own dick, but especially when you have something like 82 DK on one faction, you don't want to be doing that. You know what I mean? That seems to exacerbate the problem that we may cause.
I mean,
Yeah, well,
even FAs are a great example of that. Like the factions, both factions struggle, and that's a vehicle that both factions have access to. It's very similar, but FAs are very difficult for players to use that aren't a part of a large supportive outfit. I mean, you think of the resources we have to pour in to successfully field an FA, like all the things that we have to do to put it on the field and protect it.
and
Supplied as well.
it's hard for us. Like, this is a thing I always like to fucking think about. It's hard for us. Like, we fucking protect those FAs with so much fucking firepower, and it's still pretty simple for one guy to just like slip in and just destroy it with all of us guarding it. It's funny, but at the same time it's sad, especially if because I was reading the design philosophy here, and like looking over these points, they sound so well on paper, they're so well written. It's just like, are these the concepts we're basing the game we're playing off? And it's like, it's like theory and practice is what it is, right? The theory right here looks amazing, right? The practice, however, and I know if we were in FOD right now and having this discussion with everybody there, we would have like fucking 6 people yelling at the top of their lungs that this is a better game, and we're like picking off a game that's not even finished yet, and yabba yabba.
Yeah.
But like,
that's exactly the reason why we're talking about it, though.
It's been 3 years. What do you mean? Like,
yeah.
It's not like they had a few months, and I understand. Like, again, that being said, there's still things to consider. They want to change a lot of the game from the bottom up. That's excellent. But I keep repeating, like, would it be so hard in this entire process to give like 5%? Don't give more than 5% attention to actually having a healthy environment for the current population. Because I had this discussion with multiple people, and I was wondering, a lot of people are wondering, how many viable clients does Foxhole have? Like, how many people will buy Foxhole? Is it like unlimited? Is it like is it gonna go into billions of people? I don't think it's that. I'm sure, like, we're probably not at capacity, but remember, like, every time a person buys a game and they decide to put it down because they're bored, they don't like it, whatever, balance is bad, the community is bad, I don't care. When they put it down there in that Steam list, because we all do that, do you go back to it? maybe once, okay, maybe once, and who knows when. But you're not gonna constantly go back to it unless it's a really good game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's
I mean,
like
most of the reason why a lot of the veterans are retained on Foxhole is not through the game itself; it's through the
exactly,
clans that they're in.
Through community,
exactly. Through
whatever
the
the
Plans
community.
community
and
happens to
friends
be.
they made. I mean, I know, like, I mean, even for me, like, I'm pretty sure I speak for at least most of the people in this room that we don't really like the fun out of Foxhole has been stripped years ago, and the only fun we ever get is just those few hours we get on a weekend playing with the clan, and that's just the sole drive that we have as a Fox player is to just play with this massive community that we forged with, and just keeping up that tradition of keep playing, and that to us that's our only fun.
Another really interesting another really interesting concept is what Fancy just put down in chat. When we go to 1.0, everybody's talking about 1.0, 1.0 up, 1.0 top. What happens in 1.0 when the entire planet decides, oh, this game is out, like let's give it another try?
Yeah, that's going
And
to be.
and as Fancy says, according to the devs, they can support around 2K or maybe a bit more players at the same time. But aside from that, the maximum slots are around 3.6K, right? So what if 5K people want to play Foxhole?
The game struggles with scalability in a big way because if they don't hit the number right, the game suffers. Yeah, even the difference between 400 and 1,000 active players is the difference of a war map being playable versus unplayable and enjoyable
And
versus
I mean,
unenjoyable.
and
Uh,
my argument to this is simple. When you're gonna have that 1.0 and those 5 maybe K players or 10 maybe K players are gonna want to play that fucking game as everybody wants, and they're not gonna be able. And when they're gonna be able, they're gonna have to wait through massive queues. Are those guys gonna ever come back to Foxhole?
no,
no.
and
I mean, and to exacerbate the problem as well as that, they might say that the capacity is 3.6K, but that is, I mean, that's not counting in the fact that like when the wardens have 3 maps left, you know what I mean, and we can only
Yeah.
get those 3 maps full, you know what I mean. Then all of a sudden, like, that capacity is literally cut in half.
So the answer, in my opinion, is making sure that you've got, again, scalability is key, and they already have experimented with and a feature that the players loved a long time ago that I don't know why there's so much hostility to, but there could be a system where you open up the skirmish maps again. I mean, I love the skirmish maps. I would be playing skirmish today if it was still up. Where you've got an accelerated tech tree, the map lasts like a day. People go and play like a little mini war in that little sandbox, and you can open it up. You don't even need to have it open all the time. You can open up at periods of peak population, but it gives you scalability when you see player peaks. So you can make your main map to your average population, and then you open up additional gameplay options for player peaks in the population. I think that's sweet. I think that would give so much flexibility.
You know what? Also, this is just my 2 cents with the skirmish maps too. Is that they weren't just something there. Like they even designed them where they actually affected the main war. You know what I mean? Like every skirmish map you won, you got twice the amount of resources. If you lost, you just got the standard amount. But at least that interacted with the main war too, in a sense too. So you always feel like you're doing something, even if it's just a little skirmish map.
Yep. Now there is something that I wanted to mention before we get to the end here, and that is it's going back to the tech tree, and it's talking about something that is very near and dear to my heart: bayonets. Why? Why why in any universe would a car be invented before a bayonet? Like, I'm sorry, but no.
I would expand that discussion
There
with
are
a bandage
4.
and so.
Well, that's where I'm going to get to now. There are 5 items, gentlemen, that should not even come close to being in the tech tree. It should be something that every faction starts out with, and every faction starts with the ability to make medkits, trauma kits, plasma, bandages, and bayonets. Those 5 things should, off the bat, like, be makeable. I mean, the first couple of days of the war are like, they're really, really good infantry play, but they suffer from the lack of, I mean, I'm not just talking about lack of technology, I'm just talking about the lack of like basic shit that you need to play the game. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing more frustrating than getting shot early game, not having a bandage to repair to heal yourself or to bandage your wound up. You know what I mean? I'm not sure what maybe they put them in to balance it out. I don't know.
The bandages are actually in Avitus, apparently.
Oh, they got put in.
Yeah,
they weren't always in.
They weren't
They're not
always
always
in.
in.
Yes, you're right about
They weren't always in.
But bandages are a thing of their own. It's like, why is medical equipment stripped away from the basic start of the war? I mean, it's like ever since warfare was invented.
Never understood it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes the opening gambit a little frustrating for sure.
That's all it's really meant to do, is just like, oh, so now you're in a even worse situation of, oh, if you get hit, well, guess what, buddy?
Yeah.
Either you keep fighting and dying just to get that respawn, or you're fucked until you get hit by God knows what.
And the bayonet. I mean, I appreciate that the grenade launcher has its uses. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that the grenade launcher is useless, and you can't. But what I'm trying to say is you can't compare the two of them. You can't put them in the same choice window. It is like you're literally picking between a very, very useful item that most people want to use and an essential item that is literally the only viable source of melee combat in the game. I mean, you can punch people, but let's be serious. Like, it's very, very rare that that'll actually come off in your favor.
I'll be honest with you, man. The only reason why they're on the same level is because you press F. That's literally
I mean, and I know that, but that's the problem. I mean, early war, you need a bayonet. You need bayonets early war, but you also could really do with grenade launchers. And to put them in the same choice it's not just a hard choice. It's like, which way do you want to break the game? Pretty much, that's your choice.
They proved that we didn't need it through this scientific experiment, but it definitely decreased our experience. You know, again, I'm with you. It's unconscionable that we've got core features that are only additives to the game that just get stripped away at random.
Grenade launchers are one of those things where you don't necessarily need them. However, you need them if the other side has them. You know what I mean? So if we'd have teched bayonets, all well and good, we'd have had the melee shit, but we wouldn't have had anything early war to counter their grenade launchers. You know what I mean? Which would have been a problem. So it was the right choice to make. It just shouldn't have been a choice that we had to make. That's my point.
Anti-fun choice right there. It's like, why would you limit that? It's something that's a core staple in any warfare, you know?
Yep. I mean,
we could rant for a long time. I mean, the freaking bayonet is almost the least of the tech tree issues that we're experiencing with Foxhole right now.
Well, I disagree with that. Like,
but I hear you.
The bloody fucking tech triangle we had as wardens was fucking awful. Where there was a split between two vehicles, and then there was a third split, which being a vehicle on top of it. And it's like, holy fuck, like, just focus on one thing and move on. But no, like, everyone wants to.
That system is so broken, so broken, and so hurt right now. I have not heard any good things about it.
Well, again, I constantly monitor what we discuss and try and bring in the points I know the devs made, so to try and at least make it fair in the absence of any of them being able to reply to us. So it's worth mentioning that Mark actually said they heard all the feedback regarding the issues with it and the infighting over what should get tagged and such, and they said they're looking into it. What that means is, as usual, up for our imagination, because they're extremely secretive towards any mechanic, either in game or regarding how they treat stuff like this. So.
I mean, it's frustrating because it would be very, very easy to fix the issue. It would just be a case of, like, the war starts, you have 5 minutes to vote on your first tech. Or, for instance, when the war's about to start, you have the time before the war starts to vote on your first tech. And when the war starts, that's what you have as your first tech. After that, during the time it takes for that tech to be teched up to full completion, there is another vote ongoing for the next tech. And, like, when that time comes around, whatever tech has the most votes is the one that is able to be teched, basically.
Funny enough, I think the answer you would get if you would propose something like this would be that clans and organized groups would just take control over it because of this, which is
already good that through slavery,
which is pretty funny. Yeah, because
I want to chime in. It's like, even here, like, yes, you know, we have that anticipation that clans can control. Right now, we can't control shit. We're just creating more of a bigger problem. Like we try to strong arm, but it feels like every time we try to strong arm and continue our own, like, oh, we know better than you, it just like no matter what we do, it fucks us over. Like no matter how hard we try, either
Yeah.
with sheer massive amount of effort, we still can't really guarantee we'll get this. You know what I mean?
the
Like,
the dilemma is, you know, if you get into that argument about what's right or what's wrong, you know, you're gonna get a huge split, and neither are gonna get tacked in a good amount of time. But then at the same time, that being said, you get into situations where, like in this current war, where some tech choices were really, really strange, because the people deciding were just like doing it randomly. I'm sorry, this is the truth. Like the way the tech tree went this war wasn't of any considerance, wasn't of any like even debate about what's better or what the faction needs more. It was generally let's hold and see whatever random people put their tech into, and then everybody just follows suit so we don't split more because we can't afford it, because that's gonna probably lose us the war. And it's like that's such a bad system from all ways of looking at it, because it doesn't facilitate anything. It just facilitates frustration. And going back to what Cass said a stream ago or two, you know, forcing people in that field. I honestly heard, and even don't blame people suggesting that just, you know, like drop the fucking scrap. Just don't even bother with it. Just drop it and just go nuts on that iron and aluminium. Just get that, because we're on the principle of starting sweatshops for it. You know, it's just people through rotation, just like hammering for the gold. We're gonna be just like
Awful
looking
mechanic.
for, yeah.
Why?
Well,
Again, who wants to like? I think I'm not sure I was mentioned before, but you like when you played like StarCraft, you like imagine I want to be something one day. I want to be the SCV. That's the job. I think the SCV is the role that I want to play. Like who? What? Come on. Now.
CV here.
well, funny enough, just to mention this joke, sorry, funny enough, KFC's comments to this sort of a complaint was it's actually powering up their Bitcoin mining operations every time you hit the salvage field. Again, it's a joke. It's a good joke. It's a joke. But I just wanted to pop it in.
Can I ask you all a question that I think is quite prudent to ask after 3 wars now? With the changes to logistics, do you think it has changed enough? Do you think logistics has improved at all?
Well, my I don't mean to answer a question, but like, what do you mean improved as for supplying the front line or gathering materials, or just Logi as a whole? Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I would say I'd still feel like the grind is there, and it's even increased in a certain way where I feel like almost no improvement has been made. If anything, there's been a step backwards. Where sure, you have these interesting new toys, which being the wardens, an armored truck and a tracked truck, which most of the time won't have their time of day until either late in the game or something that to be not really much use, or you don't really notice the difference. Then you have scrapping that has, you know, been split into, well, you have a chance to even get more fucked because you're trying to mine for scrap, and guess what? You've got this secondhand mineral you have to utilize with, because it's your responsibility if you got some iron to refine it and get it to the tech base. Because if you don't, you're subconsciously fucking over the faction for just leaving it there, you know. And it's like,
I mean, this might be quite an extreme measure, but do you think you could envision a future where scrapping is taken out of the game completely?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What is the? I mean, it's just a. Or if you have a fucking.
I think the reason why that would probably never happen is because the main draw for Foxhole is the fact that, right, so this is Foxhole. It's a war game, but if you're on the front line fighting with a rifle, you've got to appreciate that that rifle was made and dug out of the ground by someone back in the back lines. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and just
Everything in Foxhole is made, and that's the draw of the game. And
I
I think
agree.
the whole idea of mining shit to then make weapons with, to then ship to the front line, is the sort of like main talking point of the game. You know what I mean?
I'll be
So they
honest with you,
probably
man.
Yeah, but go for Factorio or some shit like that, where you just automate the fucking extraction out of the fucking ground, so that player doesn't have to go mental just hitting there. It's the same principle, right? You're still extracting that fucking thing out of the ground. It's only that a fucking extractor is doing it for you, so you don't go nuts until you're 30. Is what
I
I'm
like
saying.
the idea that Foxhole could have scarcity to it, even like it, in some respect. And there's already scarcity in Foxhole to some extent, but it's like an artificial form of scarcity, if that makes sense. If you made it more about how to be efficient with the limited body of resources you have instead of how much slave labor you can employ, it would be a better game. And there's a whole bunch of variety of ways that you could do that, because I know that there'd be concerns about hoarding. There's already concerns about hoarding of resources and material that go away if you change it in some way. But you want to get rid of the grindy, unfun elements in the game, the elements that clearly don't create a good gameplay loop. Like that shouldn't be hard, and that shouldn't be controversial.
Like, I'll be honest, with the span of my whole time playing the game, which probably like 3 to 4 years, I have never once valued anything like, oh, someone built this. I'm gonna appreciate their hard work. I'm
I
honest
get
with you,
that. I get that. I'm the same, dude. What I was saying was that is the way that it is taken. That is the way that the
That's how they
devs want
view
it to
it.
be.
Yeah.
Every satchel I place, I think I win.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Okay. What I want to say on this though, because it's a really hard, like you said, especially on the scarcity part. But if you automate it, and they hinted a bit towards automation, and I'm hoping that's gonna fucking happen sooner or later. At least after the mid-war phase. Okay, early on we need to fucking scrap with our faces for some reason. I can understand that, right? But then as the fucking technology advances and we go into Age of Empires Age 2 of the game, maybe we can get some sort of chopper, like just
You have a
some
harvester. What more do you want, Razor?
yeah, but like make that fucking harvester do it itself without me there, and I'll be happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that's basically what I'm talking about.
You mean like the component fields?
Also,
It'd be so, to your point though, it'd be
Savage
so cool if you had to
mines?
fight over resources, right? Like because they had hinted at that, and I was excited. And this was, gosh, when did they talk about this? It had to be over a year ago, that you would want to really fight over these resource piles and secure them, and they'd be critical to your team's success. That's not really what's going on right now. But if you had more player attention on fighting and securing resources and securing the automation, that'd be interesting.
so
I'm thinking it would be infinitely better for the game if they they got all these like lore places out just like randomly in the middle of fucking nowhere, and these places, if you go to them, they're fucking awesome. Like you'd be like, I really hope that like we get caught out here when we're partisan one time, because to fight around this structure would be fucking sick. You know what I mean? But there's not, like, those things are off in the corner of maps where nobody ever fights over them. But if you stick one of those resource extractors in the middle of like a big fort or something like that, that has to be breached through tunnels or whatever, mines that you have to go underground for, the potential is endless for that sort of thing. And I think they really need to start thinking about doing that. Adding these places that are really, really fucking hard to attack and things like that. Not just from a static defense point of view, where AI and shit like that, but just from a sheer like ability to attack it, like as an infantryman or something.
Imagine
like
that you're in War Start and you're in Deadlands, and instead of going to Abandoned Ward, you've got a critical scrap field that's producing resources that are scarce. And you have to go over there and secure that until you can get trucks to pull that out. Because if you don't secure it, there's enough scarcity in the map that you may struggle to supply things. But you're not. So again, you're having your players commit to fighting and defending and challenging resource groups instead of AFKing with a hammer.
I don't
Yeah,
want I don't want to take the merit out of us discovering this crazy good idea, but like just look at Company of Heroes and the capture the flag
Absolutely,
system.
dude.
Yeah, it's like they don't need to fucking reinvent the light bulb. It's already out there and it's proven to work and work really really well, right? And especially
Just have
the choices between do I go and contest this or go and contest that? And to add to that, I even have like in my personal view, because like I know this is some sort of attachment to that, like do it yourself, like the old days sort of thing. Just, make the fucking thing produce on its own at a steady pace, but then add some sort of mechanic where, I don't fucking know, you have like a fucking claw and you just like take resources out and you put it in the fucking dump truck and that speeds up the process a bit and you get more, right? So the people that want to just sit there and play fucking farming simulator 220 whatever, just fucking they can do that, right? So let that little thing in that permits people that like to be hands-on and even give them a small bonus, right, for doing it, and then everybody should be happy, hopefully, right? I don't know.
So Lord Solar just made a point there. I know Kaz has replied to him. Wouldn't snowballing be a major concern for this level of thinking?
Well, yes and no, in my opinion. Company of Heroes again, right? Isn't it an issue? But that's where basically winning and losing comes in, right? You either mobilize yourself to counter, and again, devs have experimented with mechanics that could get into helping the losing faction, right? We have that new mechanic that is very rarely put into play. We saw it a few times where like random spawn points show up on the border on maps if there's nowhere to deploy for people, right? So they're very shy first steps, but that's a good indication, right? Like you're saying, right? One faction is accaparing too much of the resources. Maybe a unique event gets triggered in game, and the losing faction gets this like fucking huge convoy of freighter ships delivered to their logi towns with supplies and vehicles and shit, right? And you can just like do an announcement in game how the I don't know, government or whatever mobilized an emergency fund to
Exactly.
support
See,
the
like
the war
a
effort.
second hand.
would be so fucking cool because that would tie into the lore and shit like that. And you could say like the government of this far off land that nobody's ever heard of before, or whatever, or introduce a new nation or something like that, have sent aid, and they're like maybe they're a different coloured battle tank or something like that.
Yeah,
That would be
yeah,
cool as fuck. Yeah, that would be awesome. And I wouldn't mind the Colonials getting something like that, so we could take
exactly.
it off and use it ourselves.
Just
And if you
having
think
like
about
a
it,
third.
good, Dirk.
So we go. Okay. So, like, because you can just expand on that so much that whole idea of just like there's this third hidden AI faction that's just whenever side is on that losing spot, well, that third faction is going to support the losing side, and they
Yeah.
get those bonuses.
With scarcity, you want to get the balance right too. So yes, there is a risk of snowballing, but keep in mind we see this all the time. The faction that has more territory has more expense at the same time, and so you're expending more resources to hold the territory that you've gained anyway. So with the right balance, you would be. I mean, the gains would be there, but they wouldn't be as oppressive as I think you would think, because you think about the amount of BMATs required to hold territory.
G supplies
Yeah.
and
Well,
just manpower to just
You even
keep
see it
set
now. I
up.
mean, theoretically, you would think like colonials were winning in a massive front early to mid game of the war, which meaning they have more maps, meaning they have more component mines, more sulfur mines. But you get what I'm meaning. Like the snowball didn't really even help them in their favor. Like they have all these things they could use to farm and get more supplies, but simply enough, they're not. They ain't even do anything with it.
As a lot of smart people
Not a
said,
pimper.
the most important resource in Foxhole is actually morale, not BMATs, not EMATs, not none of that
Yep.
stuff. So
Absolutely, 150%.
But there's certain points where like in periods where we've had like, let's take components for instance, you would count how many components mines you had within your territory, and I mean and think of like how much it would limit your potential mid-late game potential as a faction like that. You used to be a realistic discussion for us even in manual farming situation. And so I don't think it's off the table. Yes, it needs to be balanced. Yes, it could be oppressive, it could be balanced poorly and could not work. But and it comes back to the discussion we talked about earlier. It's very much dependent on what the player population is. Because again, if you got a full map with only 400 people playing, there's no scarcity. Like, I mean, you have as much of whatever you want.
Exactly, yeah. Like you don't need to worry if you have the population for it, but the population has to be motivated to stay for something. And if it's not gonna be the lure, it's not gonna be the arc of the game, and
It's not going to be scrapping.
It's not gonna be scrapping for sure. So what's left? Tanks? Well, bad news. Until you get to them, there's a long way, and even when you get to them, there's a huge
Still gotta
infight,
scrap.
and it's a huge infight about what tank should we get, and everybody's just like screaming at each other, screeching that no, that tank is better, no, that just puts you off, and you just want to go do something else.
And this is just another thing I just want to add in, because again, we have RTSs like Company of Heroes and StarCraft. They don't, out of like every patch, they don't introduce a new vehicle. Like, introducing a new vehicle is very, very scary for RTS games, because just as you would assume, a new vehicle means how's it going to do in this current meta? Is this going to fucking change the meta, or is it, there's a slight chance it might not do anything to the meta. But that's why you have those type of games that don't rarely ever, introduce new vehicles until they have like a reason to, like a DLC expansion that, or after a while, after a couple of patches, oh, it's time to release like a new unit for each faction, and like even then, it balance and change is going out the window, because now you have to rework things. And I feel like that's a lot of things that we haven't really had touched on. Is a lot of the old toys haven't really been reworked, and they kind of just left to just get fucked on. And just adding on to the fact that there's now, like, they're introducing two more. We could use this as a segue, as two no more vehicles right now, like the new Colonial light car and the new Warden heavy car.
Yeah, so I guess we could just go straight into them, especially because we spent so much time on the
It was
balancing
a
issue.
rant. It was a rant, but
Yeah, but
it
it
has
was
to be heard. We have to get it off our chest. It's our duty.
yeah. So let's go straight into the colonial one here. The anti-tank armor car, and a thing you can't really see on screen, and I'll see if I can try and get the video real quick from FOD. This is an actually automatic rifle, anti-rifle, so it actually fire rate is improved. So
It's not just an AT gun slapped on or an ATR slapped on an armored car. It actually has better stats. Like Razor was saying, it fires somewhat automatically at a faster firing rate on a better stability platform, meaning you shoot more accurately compared if you were to be shooting with an ATR. Just so that way they're giving it a better, stat line use.
And I am pretty confident this thing is going to be fast as fuck. It's going to come in swarms because it's only a 2-man crew. So you have a 10-man clan, you can get 5 of these things speeding down roads and shit like that. It's got wheels. It's got those chains on the back that tell me that it's decent off-road. Yeah, this thing is going to be a problem, but it's going to be a fucking dream to be in one of these things. However, because it has wheels, I think it's going to be disabled rather easily. So small arms is probably going to be vulnerable to like infantry and shit like that.
But you can't take the armored car out of the armored car. It's, in the end of the day, an armored car is still an armored car. It's still, weak and flimsy as hell.
Yeah.
Are we good with this slide, everyone, or do we want to switch off to the next one? Because you can barely notice it with those back wheels. Is that they changed the engine of it, and I don't know if this is going to affect gameplay of it, but like it's just from like being a warden and seeing how they do warden vehicles. When you see the ass end of this vehicle, it's like,
Jesus
oh
Christ.
shit, that's the weakness. That's the weakness right there. Is that ass? Like, look at that. It's nowhere. Like, it's
got a tight ass.
Like, that's, to me, that's where it's like, oh, this is a mass. Like, sure, it's gonna be fast. We can see that from the change of the vehicle. It's like, oh, okay, it's gonna perform a little faster. But that ass end shows me that it's gonna take probably more damage on the rear end than it is from the front compared to like the normal armored car.
Yeah.
Then
I'm just thinking.
the other debate. Oh, go.
I'm especially with the new driving mechanics. Imagine, just put yourselves in this situation, guys. Okay, you're in a battle tank. You're going down a road. It's at night. Okay, you're trying to transfer between towns, and then 5 of these things come out of the fucking darkness in front of you. You can take out one with your gun, but the other 4 speed right by you. They don't then pull a handbrake and start opening up into your engine. I don't care what tank you're in, you're gonna fucking die. You know what I mean? So these things, if they're used correctly by the colonials, and I cannot emphasize that point enough, if
Flanking.
they are used correctly, they will be fucking amazing. They will be absolutely sick as fuck. Combining an automatic AT rifle with maneuverability and speed is going to be amazing, because you can do things like speed by the tank while the turret's aiming behind. You know what I mean? To fire at it as you drive by it and shit like that. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be extremely frustrating as well playing against them.
Like no one, like rarely do people know how good the ATR is. Like it's such a very, like it can destroy a light tank. It's such a fast, like you would be like, holy shit, it died that fast. Like, and giving them a, like, this is pretty much like a buff to just that weapon caliber in general. Like they have the mobility with even a faster firing rate, and it's like, yo, like you can pump out more DPS than you would normally. And just seeing like it's just the fear of, well, you're not going to get the tank turret to rotate faster to catch up to, unless your driver doesn't know what he's doing. And even then, if you just have the gun focusing on the turret, well, guess what? You get what I mean? Like, there's so much potential with this, and it's, I don't know. I don't know why
you can
people
have
complain.
it. You can have it as sort of like a forward vehicle to disable tanks, and then your battle tank pushes up and finishes it off. Shit like that, because ATRs are really good at disabling vehicles. So you might not the job of this vehicle might not necessarily even be to destroy the vehicle. It might just be to disable it and then speed away and let the heavier armor finish it off, sort of thing.
Or even then, it's a PESC, and if it's distracting the BT, well, guess what? Like it's doing its job of distracting the BT. You're staying at 100% HP, and you get to fire stronger firepower while something that's not even focusing you.
Good news, guys. I managed to find the video. Give me a second here. I can actually show it to you guys.
I mean, it's going to be one of those things where we're just going to have to wait and see. That
so a lot of people are noticing they're complaining about Jesus. Oh my god, about the open top.
The open top. It shouldn't be that big of a deal.
It's a pretty high. It's pretty high compared to the.
It's not. I think it's because they're looking at it, comparing it to the tankette.
Yeah, but the
like,
tankette is low. It's really low, and it's easy to shoot
exactly.
inside.
It's like
no more. It's not. They're no more vulnerable than the R on a half track. In fact, they're more protected than the R on a half track.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to grenade them in there.
I love the way that the fucking smoke comes out of, the muzzle brake. So it's like looks like a sword as it exits the AT gun.
One thing they need to do, and this is just a flavor from my end, is when something shoots, they need to give the vehicle a reaction where you can just feel the raw strength of something firing. Don't get me wrong, I still feel like it would shake the vehicle of something in general firing. I just hate how looking at it just looks so static, and it's just like you don't feel the strength of whatever you're firing.
Yeah, it should be rocking the vehicle.
Bounce it back.
Yeah, it's going to be scary, but I mean, it's going to have its uses, but I think it's going to be very vulnerable against infantry. So you're going to be seeing them. You're going to be seeing them all over the place, obviously, to start with, but I think as time goes on, they're going to be a lot more specialized. You're going to see them running around with organized people trying to take out lone vehicles, things like that.
Right. I think
firing rate's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty fast, but the clip is pretty small, so they're gonna have to reload. As the saving grace, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. I personally think this is like I was robbed of my Puma. And this is I'm a bit upset about this. I wanted a Puma.
It would look better in Warden colors, I have to say.
Yeah, I was robbed of my Puma. I'm gonna probably wait for my Puma. Hopefully, our version of this is gonna have a double RPG barrel.
Didn't we get an armor car as well?
Well, we have the tracked one, yes, but that's just attract AC. I'm just hoping.
No. Aren't we getting another vehicle? I thought we were getting a new vehicle as well.
Oh
again.
yeah, I'll show it to you in a second.
We'll get
yeah.
to it in a
But
second.
now
Guys, do you have anything you want to say about
I
the
think as
colonial?
might have had to bounce on us because he actually has other duties aside from our shenanigans, so he had to jump ship for
Worries.
now.
Ah,
Hopefully,
shit.
if he can make it back until we finish, he's gonna probably let us know. If not, we'll catch him next time. Yeah.
So, just any closing statements on the vehicle?
So
on this.
For me personally, like Avatar said, I think infantry is going to be able to pretty much counter this. I'm very interested into capturing it. Of course, like that's going to be interesting to have a few of these to play
It
around
can
with.
fill a very niche role in tank
Mhm.
combat. I think seeing these in late war and seeing these tier three versions of these are going to be fucking horrible.
Nah,
You know what I mean?
that's
But
going to be really hard to
it's gonna be
achieve.
difficult and hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like there's certain staples that once you finally get to test them on the field, depending on what the lineup is or what they're lined up with, it's almost unnecessary to almost somewhat
Also,
grab, if you get what I
late
mean.
game, I'm not really afraid of it because we already have the speedy light tank from the Colonials, and although it has a lot of potential, we didn't see it do much. So
What I think,
So they
what I mean by niche thing for a role for these is it's not necessarily being afraid of these on their own. It's more of like them being part of a large tank formation.
oh, okay, yeah. So another
So-
thing to worry about. I get what you're saying now.
Exactly, yeah.
That's one thing I like, and Holland says this in the Discord that it's a noob friendly vehicle, and that's a key thing
Mhm.
of you have something cheap and also noob friendly to help. You can have a bunch of PTs in here, not really
Very
be
good
worried
point.
that
Yeah.
Maybe I told me we're just about to win the war. Glory to Callahan, brothers.
Nice. That's really nice to hear.
Just might
Let's celebrate by looking at our new vehicle here.
This better look good.
Well, it depends who you ask, I guess. People are pretty.
maybe you might need a couple of drinks.
What the fuck is that?
It's the newest Callahan's Jordans,
Air
fresh
Jordans.
from China.
It's just, I mean, what the fuck?
Wait a
Got
minute.
lots of
Let me
soak
try
in
and
here.
help you here. Well, I don't know if people read the stats of it, but let me try and help you here real quick. Maybe this helps. Let's see.
Tank turret on it. What the fuck? It's got a tank turret on it, like a
Yeah,
light
let's
tank
see if
turret.
this works.
What the fuck?
People are already theorizing that basically they tried to put Matt's hat into the game, so they just slapped it on the armor car here.
It's Grom's hat.
It's Grom's
turnable turret.
Yes, it is turnable. It is. It's basically they just like when we were joking about just like taking shit from the tank and slapping it on other shit. That's basically what's happening here. We have the front of a half truck, the back of a Jeep, and the turret of a tank all glued up together like with Legos.
I think it's really funny. If you go back and watch old No Man's Lands from like a year ago or whatever, half the shit that's coming out right now, we were talking about back then. You know what I mean? It's like actually coming out right now. Like, I can't believe this thing can turn its turret. That's a little bit silly for me. I mean, they've just given us a better version of what the Colonials have got.
It doesn't come with its fair downsides with it though. Like, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
the better caliber is awesome, but it also has some nerfs to it as well. It doesn't fire at a max 40 range. It fires at a max of 30 range now. I'm assuming the reload rate is going to be the same. It says as a slow speed, which is going to be even worse than the light tank turret speed, which is already bad. So thinking that it's not going to be turning
This
anywhere.
is going to be able to do what I envision the Colonial armored car is going to be able to do in large tank formations, but it's just going to be able to do it better. Like, you load one of these things, they're very cheap. You put a couple of AT, 40mm armor penetrating in the back. You turn the turret to face behind the vehicle. Then you just wait for the tank engagement to start, speed down the road past the tank that's just fired, and then put one into its engine. You know what I mean? It's like This thing is
It's
going to
not
be
a
fucking
fast.
awesome.
This isn't a fast vehicle.
It's
It's
gonna
an
be a
about time.
crawl. It's gonna be a crawl, but yeah, especially on road, it should be faster than about time, I guess.
Because for some reason, like
It's
I this
win
is
as well.
my
Sorry, win as well. If this thing, in the process of attempting to take out the battle tank's engine, takes a battle tank shell and blows up, our battle tank is going to have an advantage. So it's win-win, with that type of tactic. And I think this thing is going to fucking shine at that type of thing, and I can't wait to try it out. It looks horrible, absolutely fucking horrible. Whoever designed that wants a slap in the face for even considering that design. That design is horrible to look at, but for its utility in the game, I think it's going to do really well.
Well, to me, it better encourages the strong front line that the Wardens represent. Well, they have now another tool to be like, well, hi, fuck you, if you want to come up. But I think the devs even talked about the main reason why they wanted to introduce this is the war don't really have a heavy-hitting early game vehicle, and this was to overcompensate if they make that choice. You know what I mean? It's a bit crazy. It's like, I don't know. I feel like because it's called a heavy armored car. My biggest gripe is when you think of something called a heavy armored XXX, I would think, oh, okay, it's stronger than what it normally is. It has more armor.
Yeah, it goes
Just
back
from
to
the
my
two
favorite
words, heavy
joke.
armored.
Goes back to my favorite joke where why armored cars are called armor, but they can take.
All they have to do is just call them armed cars, heavy armed car. Like that to me, it's just like, okay, there you go. Just remove the armored part. Just change it to armed.
This thing is going to be incredibly good for QRF to bring a lot more firepower to certain situations and stuff like that. I really think it's going to be a good thing. The only thing that I can find bad about it is its design. Its design is terrible.
Well, like all things, we have to see how it goes in action, because I mean, everyone was going crazy when the first, introduction of the armored cars was gonna be like, oh my god, these are gonna be crazy.
Why didn't they put that turret on top of a normal armored car? That would have looked fine.
Probably because they couldn't fit this weird fucking design choice. I don't know. I think they want to do something similar to the heavy Tinkette, or heavy Tinkette. Just the Tinkette in general was complete redesign. But it's I don't even this is a whole new vehicle on its own. I don't even know. Like Razor said, it's like a butcher of 3 different vehicles in one.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I've said all I need to say on that.
Yeah, it's time to slowly wrap it up here because we need to attend the celebrations, right? Because Wizards are about to
of course, yes.
pop
I have
up
some food to eat.
the cold.
The only thing I'll say in closing, going back to the law thing, and the whole dev disconnect thing, I really hope that in the future that the devs can have a better connection with the community. And I don't want to, the community, I mean, everybody's got their comments and beliefs about the community, how well the job of community manager has been done over the years. But I think that for things to be healed and for the game to benefit from people's input, the communication between the devs and the community has to be improved, and they have to broaden their group of people that they're talking to, because I think the biggest problem with the whole disconnect thing is that they're only speaking to people that agree with them, and for things to be changed and for things to be improved, you don't necessarily have to just talk to people that agree with you. It's more beneficial, I found, to talk to people that disagree with you, so that you can bounce your ideas off each other and shit like that. So hopefully in the future, that type of thing will be improved.
Dark?
Whatever.
Any closing remarks you want to bring to us?
Just to backtrack with what I was just saying too is I love this game, even though I don't have fun with it unless I'm playing it in the clan setting. I really do hope they can make these changes and make them fast, because I know 1.0 is catching up, and I think the first thing we're going to be tackling is the Dead Harvest update. Hopefully they can make something that changes, the meta. I mean, not in a realistic scenario where things go crazy, but because like last year, the last Dead Harvest or Dead Harvest in general has always been this is a nice break from the norm. So hopefully that could be some fun that brings a lot of joy back.
Yeah, I heard
And
to burst your bubble, but according to what they said on their stream and so on and so forth, they're not going to invest a lot of work into it. So that what basically means is, and I'm just like going off of what they said. So I'm just guessing because we're gonna find out more details on NevDev stream. But it looks to be it's just gonna be a classic normal war with the added fact that you're gonna be able to turn or like use zombies in your advantage in some way and
like the last war, or the last of it.
similar. But if you remember in the last of it, the zombies were their own faction. In this iteration, I'm pretty certain that there's not going to be the zombie faction. There's going to be the warden faction and the colonial faction, but both factions are going to be able to use zombies in the conflict to their advantage, sort of a thing.
So not Dawn of the Dead zombies, more like secret Nazi soldier zombies.
Exactly what Avid is saying, basically. And then we're gonna have similar something to the mech that's gonna be on both factions, like a mini boss sort of like evil incarnated or something like that. Judging from their little poster, that's meant to give a sneak preview of it.
Well, nonetheless, I mean, I still hopes that it can still brush up and change the current meta. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
still
it's still gonna be a good, nice,
a
shake
break.
of yeah. I
Hopefully
mean,
some numbers back as well.
well, I know for most people it might be an actual break 'cause they're not gonna bother with it. But I know Kaz, if he was here, he would say, "Fuck that! I don't wanna, I don't wanna touch that."
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. We'll hopefully it'll bring some numbers back, and I'm sure that we'll have some comments on Dead Harvest in our next stream. Might even do a little specialist stream for Dead Harvest.
Yeah, that would be
And,
nice. That would be
we can
nice.
talk about. Yeah. So just again, guys, if you're on the 82DK Discord, don't hesitate to post any questions. Serious questions, please, and or talking points or anything like that. Post them in the No Man's Land channel, and if they're good enough, we'll get around to them in the next session. But from me, thank you for attending with us, guys, and listening to us drone on and complain. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Remember to cook your grenades.
And stop fucking using those foxholes already. We have bunkers. We have other shit. Come on, guys.
Indeed.
Got other problems to worry about.
Bye, guys. See you guys later.